Good afternoon. My name is Kevin Brunner. I'm the founder of the Q Companies. For 22 years, we have evolved from a simple financial planning firm called Brunner Financial into the Q Companies, and we provide a whole series of other complementary services to financial planning. We don't sound like financial advisors because we talk about tax an awful lot. I learned early on, if you beat the S&P, which isn't hard, every year, and you cut the client's taxes in half every year, client never leaves. So we do a whole series of very advanced planning with our clients. And one of these is called an installment sale trust. And the installment sale trust came from Ernst before they were Ernst & Young in 1970. It was created by two tax attorneys there who trained me in 2004. So their own partners could defer the tax on the exit. It was a program they then used with their own clients who were selling a business, selling assets to defer the tax on those things. It's used by Bain Capital in mergers and acquisition deals because the trust intermediates a transaction so both sides can get what they want. People exiting receive a special purpose trust that their money lands in, same thing, structured slightly differently. So it's a very high-end estate planning tool as well. It's often used to bleed down a massive estate below estate tax thresholds. So it can be used in many ways. It's nothing new. Your CPA says he's never heard of it. He just needs to get out more and do a little more continuing education. We use it in 1031 transactions. The IRS approved it as a fallback for a 1031. I've done over 3,800 transactions, I think 3,900 now. About 47 million in tax savings. That's first year. That's not the ongoing tax savings. The average client saves a little over $400,000 per transaction if you average them all out. I've got 30 years experience doing these kinds of things, 22 years owning a financial planning firm. I did M&A deals all through the 90s, built and sold several businesses. Had one that didn't work out so well. Life kicks you in the teeth at least once, right? You learn more from that than you do from the good deals, right? So you find out who's loyal, I'll tell you that. So I've seen both sides of all these kinds of things. About 2,000 happy clients, you add them all up. Christian Ramsey, he's our credit and investment fiduciary. He's got about 25 years experience doing this. He wrote a book on some of these things that he and I came together and wrote a second book that's now on its second edition. And we'll have a page here that'll show you about the book. There's now two more books and another very extensive sort of brochure book that trains people how this works, goes into the history of it, everything else. He is an accredited investment fiduciary. And since he's not on this webinar, I'll embarrass him. He's generally the smartest man in whatever room he's standing in, but he never shows off. He has an eidetic memory. Not a guy you want to play cards with, but he's honest, ethical. He really understands being a fiduciary. Trevor LaParle. Trevor came on a couple years ago here. He is a partner here. He is become a subject matter expert on these things. He wrote a due diligence paper that we then shared with clients that honestly was more well-written than most tax attorneys would have wrote. He's already saved clients over 10 million in taxes, subject matter expert on all things related to the installment sale trust. He is a certified tax and business advisor as a designation as well. This is a selection of our team here. We have trust administrators here. Craig Redler is an attorney, a trust attorney. He's trustee for one of the firms and manages these transactions. He gets paid $10,000 a day plus travel to go to Lisbon, Athens, and Davos to lecture on these things, on asset protection, trust planning, things on international levels even. So we're very fortunate to have him. Matt Nyes, our Chief Technology Officer, Chief Innovation Officer. He's the reason these slides look so good and all this technology even works. Nathan Parch, Chief Marketing, very creative. Very ingenious man. Morris Chubb has been the CFO of 3 companies on the NASDAQ that went public on the NASDAQ. He has done so many M&A deals, he doesn't remember all of them at this point. Brilliant, brilliant man. Tremendous level of experience you're seeing here on this slide. These are some of the Q companies, not all of them. We have the Q Exchange. That's where the IRS approved the installment sale trust as an alternative to a 1031. We are a 1031 accommodation service. Q Financial, which is who you're talking to today, is financial planning, all things financial planning. We get deep into the weeds with you. We get deep into tax planning because that's your number one expense. Q Hedge Fund, capital management, it's an options fund. We could talk more about that on a different call. You have to be an accredited investor. The Q Affiliate Advantage provides services to other financial advisors. So other financial advisory firms come to us for these services for their clients. And then Q Registered Investment Advisory, there on the bottom right, that is the fiduciary money management. It's a fee only money management. So it doesn't matter what the investment is, they get paid the same. So their interest and your interest are aligned. The more money you make, the more money they make. These are a few of our partners. ISD Admin Services and CB Administrative Services are corporate trustee services, which means this goes on into perpetuity. You create one of these trusts, this becomes a generational and legacy thing if that's what you want it to do. Iron Gate Holdings, now that handles the smaller transactions. And it's a very lean, very sleek, very simple, no load, no fee way of unloading your assets and taking a significant income stream off all the money, not just the after-tax portion, but on all the money. So the benefit out the other end can be sometimes 3 times what you would have made had you just sold and paid the taxes and invested what was left. Tax for You is all about education, educating people on these topics. They have a YouTube page and all kinds of other things here. Farmers Trust, CB Farmers Trust. If you're not a corporate farmer doing, 100 million a year, if you're the average family farm doing 10 million a year, you get hammered on taxes. Nobody's helping these people. Well, we do. We have ways they can defer the tax on the crop every year for 30 years and a day. The tax doesn't come due for 30 years and a day. It's the same number as it was 30 years previous. You just got to keep that money invested, earning a rate of return for you for 30 years. Sell My Business Now, small business owners. These small business owners don't work till they're 80 because they want to. They work till they're 80 because after taxes, if they sell, there's not enough money left to live on. They can't 1031. So small business owners get hammered out the other end. So that is serving small business owners. And then Sell My FDX, FedEx. We do a lot of business with FedEx contractors. FedEx loves us. They've done everything except outright endorse us. They're not allowed to do that, by the way. But when a FedEx contractor goes to sell, they refer them directly to us to help with the transaction. So this helps when you're selling any kind of an expensive asset. I've done medical patents. We actually intermediated the transaction for one of the patents that became some of the radar absorbing paint on the B-2 stealth bomber, the engineer that owned that patent. I did part of a Hollywood studio. That was my largest transaction ever. We can do artwork, but I've only done one piece of art. It was a $5 million painting that looked like a Jackson Pollock, but like a third grader did it, right? He paid 50 grand for it. When he retired from the law firm, the staff said, that has to go home with you. It hung in the conference room. They hated it. And his wife said, you can't bring that home. She goes, hang it in the garage. So he sold it. It sold for $5 million at auction. So we deferred the tax on all of that. It doesn't have to be real estate, doesn't have to be a business, doesn't have to be, it can be many other things. It can't be publicly traded stock, but we have other methods for that. Our 2 main goals for you here today is to talk about how we maximize income by keeping money that otherwise would have been lost, working, earning a rate of return for you. And then along the way, we minimize the taxation on the money as the trust sends you the income. So it doesn't stop with just the sale of the asset and the deferral. And there's 2 different strategies we use here, 2 different trust contracts. The 537 Installment Sale Trust, 537 is an IRS publication that actually tells you how to do all this. So when your CPA tells you, oh, no, you'll get taxed, no, whatever, he needs to read the publication. Then we have some due diligence he needs to read. Then when he gets up to speed, we'll train him how to do it. But that is an individual trust. And that's for transactions 1 million and over. Because there are certain fixed costs in managing that, and we don't want to charge that against a $400,000 transaction. That's not fair, right? So we also have a structured installment sale program. It's not unlike the one MetLife uses, but MetLife only pays 4% and has no liquidity, and there's nothing you can do. They have one option, take it or leave it, and they've been around a really long time. They make more money on your assets than you do. No, instead, we have a structured installment sale that ticks all the boxes with the IRS that has no loads, no fees, and a guaranteed payout. So there are several options under that. We'll cover that later.
And now for the fun part, how the heck do you actually defer the tax liability and how does this all work? So like Kevin said, there's 2 different programs that we utilize. We have the publication 537 Installment Sale Trust that's suited for people who are looking to sell an asset over $1 million or have a portfolio that is going to add up over $1 million, where we look to make sure we dot the I's, cross the T's with all of these transactions. And here's how we go about it. So nothing is going to feel different than the 1031 exchange, where think of the 1031 exchange as your train station, where you go to the 1031, from there you have options. So in the context of a real estate transaction, you're going to have the same kind of scenario, where if you're local to us, we're actually starting up our own realty service very shortly here. We can probably help list your property, where if not, you have your own realtor or your own transaction. That's outside of us. The idea is you can think of this as your helipad, where this is where you're going to land upon close of escrow. So at close of escrow, what we're going to do is two different scenarios. We're going to talk about scenario one right now, which is the 1031 exchange. So in the 1031 exchange, for those of you who are or are not familiar with the process, what happens is you need to assign a qualified intermediary. You can't just have any Joe Schmo company or friend or advisor hold the funds for you for the entirety of the 180-day period or shorter than that, depends on how long your transaction takes. You need to use an IRS approved qualified intermediary. We are one of those. So at close of escrow, what happens is we send the money to our Q 1031 exchange, where then you have 45 days to make a decision. You say, hey, you know what? I still like this 537 installment sale trust program. Let's go with that. So what's going to happen is two very simple moving pieces. Piece number one is we create a one-off revocable business purpose trust. This trust is not commingled with any other assets. What that looks like is, I'll use Kevin's name, for example. We can make something like the KB26 trust. You know, his initials in the year we did it. Let's say it's 2026. So what we're going to do at close of the 45-day period is say, okay, great. You decided you wanted to back into this 537 installment sale trust. We create a one-off bank account. We clear through City National Bank. For those of you that are on the West Coast here, and for those of you on the East Coast and the Midwest as well, you've probably seen a Lakers game, a Rams game, or a Kings game right off Flower Street. You'll see City National Bank in the LA skyline. Very large bank under the RBC company umbrella, where at the end of the 45-day period, the trust is going to receive those funds, and you are going to assign those proceeds. This trust is not directly you. So don't get it confused with your typical living trust where it's going to have, people say, well, I already have a revocable trust. There's thousands of different styles of trust out there that have different purposes. And this one has the purpose for your tax benefit. And with this model, the trust has its own EIN. So going back to that KB26, the KB26 trust is not Kevin. It's its own entity in the eyes of the IRS. That entity is going to receive the funds. And the reason why you don't have a taxable event is because you receive a secured promissory note that collateralizes the trust. That promissory note is just like how a bank would hold a note against a property, where some of you have maybe done deals in the past where you've had an owner financing or simply you had a mortgage on a property. There's nothing that you can do. Let's say you have a single family home with a $100,000 mortgage on it. You can't go and add a second story without talking to the bank because your property is the collateral for the bank's note. Take that same idea and apply it to the trust, where it's going to kind of feel like an owner financing deal, where we do an interest-only note, preserve the entirety of the capital gain and depreciation recapture inside of the trust, and kick out interest-only payments. Where the idea is you'll want to get interest off of this asset, see it grow throughout the years, and then eventually continually adjust for inflation while still maintaining those benefits of a step up in basis. A lot to unpack in there. So let's go piece by piece. Piece one, we have the note. So, unlike a typical note, some people will bring it up and say, oh, hey, well, if it's like an owner financing deal, why don't I just do my own owner financing and tie it to the real estate? The hiccups there are the flexibility and the liquidity along with the growth. In a typical owner financing deal, if I talk to Kevin and say, hey, Kev, you got this property, it's worth $1 million. I want to put 0% down. I'll pay you 5% interest let's say for 10 years, and have a balloon payment at the end of the 10 years of the original $1 million. In that model, I pay Kevin, easy math there, $50,000 a year. But at the end of the 10 years, if the property is now worth 1.5 million, Kevin gets none of that. That's a complete opposite with the 537 installment sale trust, where it's going to kind of feel like a self-directed IRA, where rather than you, of course, taking all that tax liability up front throughout the years, you're able to defer all of it inside and only get taxed on what you receive. So with our model, with our typical note structure, it looks like a 6% interest only note where you get guaranteed interest off of the asset plus additional growth potential on the principal. So the idea is you get started with us with the installment sale trust and say, hey, you know what? It's been 5 years now. You guys have done great with the money. You guys have been kicking me out $60,000 a year. That's 6%. And now the principal has gone from 1 million to 1,500,000. Can we refinance our note and continue to defer the capital gain tax liability and increase our $60,000 a year to now $90,000 a year? Absolutely. And then you keep on going. So the idea is this trust wears multiple hats, where it very much fits into the estate plan, where you can plan for one, turning yourself into your own trust fund baby, and two, if you have heirs, you can pass this down to your heirs tax free. So it really helps solve a lot of the arguments with the real estate where we personally have had transactions in the past where we now got in front of it with kids inheriting one big trust. And you can take that same idea with the real estate, where mom and dad have a $5 million building and the kids are all different walks of life. And I'll try to keep this outside of our actual scenario with names, but we have Timmy, Tommy, and Sally. Timmy, Tommy, and Sally all have, again, different walks of life where Timmy and Tommy want to keep the property, but Sally wants to get paid out. So the hiccup is Timmy and Tommy don't have enough to pay off Sally, and now there's a whole legal battle with them trying to pay off Sally in the meantime with money that they don't have. With our trust model, we make it incredibly easy, where any of the kids can do whatever they want. So take that same model. I'll use $6 million for pretty numbers here. Each kid gets their own one-off trust, and we do this free of charge. So let's say there's 3 kids, just like in this scenario. What can happen is each gets their own bucket of $2 million, where we can go to Timmy and say, hey, Timmy, do you want to take the lump sum, or would you like to keep the trust? Timmy says, hey, I'm really proactive in the business. I'm going to pick up a couple real estate properties. I'm going to take this money tax-free. We say, great, go ahead and take that money tax-free. Go to Tommy. He says, same thing. Sally says, hey, you know what? I'm not really great with money. I'd rather stick with this 6% passive income and keep it inside the trust. We say, great, you're able to do that and just keep on sticking with this, treat it like a pension. So it gives you more flexibility on the estate plan while also making sure that this money is going to be there for you for the rest of your life. But we also have some people that just wind it down and say, hey, you know what? I want to die with nothing. So power to you. So what are the programs out there? There's the MetLife structured installment sale. There's the Delaware statutory trust. There's the typical 1031 exchange where you continue to buy more single families, buy another apartment building. We like to compare them all between the 537 installment sale trust. So what we typically see in terms of income and total return percentages is on the MetLife program, that is pretty cut and dry. Feels 100% like an annuity, where over the time period, maybe it's 20 years that you choose, for example, we typically see them offering rates from 3.5 to 4.5% over that period, where you're gradually getting a small piece of your pie every single year plus interest. They don't have much activity in that program because, like we talked about, just getting, 3.5 to 4.5%, it's kind of hard to argue for instead of just paying the tax and investing the money outside. With things like the Delaware Statutory Trust, we've been having a concerning amount of people coming in that have done Delaware Statutory Trust and are not getting paid anymore. We do not like probably 95% of the Delaware statutory trusts that are out there. And at some point later on, Kevin can harp on with you on another call on the fraternity that the Delaware trustee platforms are, where they do not want to have anybody else inside and they really want to charge you as much as they can. I like to compare it to Walmart and Target fixing their prices, where they want to each make a buck, so they both decide to charge you $25 instead of it actually being 15, what it's actually worth. So they both make money. But back to this here. 1031 exchange. It really depends. A fantastic real estate deal. If you're still rowing, you find a great property, of course you can make more money. But the chances of you being here are probably because you don't want to keep on doing a 1031 exchange. You don't want to repurpose a property, and that's where the 537 installment sale trust wins. We have a running average of 9 to 13 with a minimum guarantee of 6% coming out to you as income. That means net of fees, net of expenses. That is what is coming to your pocket every single year, processed quarterly. So over the time frame with liquidity, that's another big conversation where this entire model with the 537 installment sale trust is fully revocable. You could start with us today and then, a couple of years from now say, you know what? I decided I want to pack my bags, get outside of the US and just pay the tax. I want to move to Mexico or Europe and just live off the beauty of the land. Takes us a couple days, money's back in your account. Of course, triggers a tax liability, but it is nice to know that you have that flexibility of taking money out if need be. And the tax control. One really neat part that we will definitely talk with you about on our one-off call that we'll do with you after this webinar is the flexibility with how, when, and if you pay the tax. One really neat part with the promissory note is that you are the owner of the promissory note and you control the terms of the promissory note, meaning that we could have a conversation saying, hey, you know what? I see you guys' model is a running average of 9 to 13, but I have $6 million coming through on my sale. I don't need $360,000 a year. Can we look at doing an interest of maybe 4% instead and letting more growth happen inside of the trust? That's a very easy possibility that you can't control with something like a 1031 exchange. You can't tell your tenants to say, hey, don't pay me the full amount yet and pay me the full amount next year. If you do that, they probably won't pay ever. So this model is very neat to be able to turn on and turn off. And the same applies with things like the Delaware Statutory Trust and MetLife. Once you're in it, you're in it. It's kind of a set it and forget it. MetLife and Delaware Statutory Trust have a pretty high recapture on if you leave early. Usually for the Delaware Statutory Trust, it means that you actually have to sell your portion to get outside of it. So it's not like you can just walk away. But with the 537 installment sale trust, it's a one-off. So it's not commingled with any other assets. And if you leave, it's not going to affect Joe Schmo next door or Mary across the street. It's totally tied to just you. And now I'm going to hand it back to Kevin. He's going to go through a couple of the case studies here with people that have utilized the installment sale trust already.
So the names and locations have been changed to protect the innocent, as they say in the detective movie, right? But Steve and Kathy, it was a $1 million purchase way back in 1990. Current value was $5 million. And it was about a 6 cap building, which is doing pretty good, especially for California. It was an unusual transaction. The projected tax and recapture cost at sale is about $1.5 million. And their net income after debt and management was about 170 a year off the building. So they sold for $5 million. Steve and Kathy collect 4.25 after some debt on the building and commissions and escrow and all those other people that line up with their handout when you sell an asset, right? So there were no capital gains tax, but have $250,000 per year available to have income to help pay for college for 2 children. Part of it was used to acquire a vacation home in Costa Rica. At age 60, they turned on the income to receive lifetime payments of $293,000 a year per year. They saved about $2.5 million in estate tax doing it this way. Case study 2, Rick and Jane's apartments. They bought it in 96 for $1 million. Current worth is about $3 million. It's about a 6 cap building. $500,000 tax at sale. They're going to sell for 3 million. They would have collected 1.25 after debt and retired, paid the capital gains tax owed over 21 years instead of all at once. They go on a $25,000 vacation to Europe. They set aside $150,000 as inheritance, and immediately they receive an income of $110,000 a year, which increases over time as the assets in the trust grow. By the way, that was more than their net on rents on the building. Case study 3, John and Betty had a California rental. They originally bought it back in 1990 for $100,000. It's now worth $500,000. They're making about $12,000 a year. If they sold today, they'd lose about $100,000 just in taxes up front. So they sell the rental for $500,000. They pay no gains tax in the year of the sale. They buy a $100,000 RV for cash with sale proceeds. They receive an income of $27,000 a year beginning 1 year after the sale. So we can structure the payout to meet whatever your long-term financial planning and retirement goals are. You're not giving up the step up in basis later. You're not giving up appreciation. People think, well, if I hold on to the property, it's going to appreciate. Well, actually, real estate doesn't appreciate. It inflates with inflation. It's not true appreciation. It's just inflation that's happening. The value of your dollar's gone down, so one offsets the other most of the time. Where the assets in the trust, it is true appreciation of the assets inside the trust. Generally, our IST, the assets in there appreciate more than if you would have kept the building, okay? Plus the income. How do we do that? The trust never needs a new roof. It never has vacancies. And you're managing the trust for what your property taxes and insurance would have been keeping the building. It's just economies of scale. That's all it is. So a structured installment sale is the other program we're going to talk about. So this is for your transactions that are less than 1 million. By the way, we have clients that are doing $2 million transactions that want to do the structured installment sale, just the streamlined, straightforward payout model, because that just makes more sense for their situation. So it's not limited. You can do over $1 million if you prefer this model of investing. Not every transaction requires the full 537 installment sale trust. The Internal Revenue Code Section 453 and the publication that tells you how to do it called Publication 537. Same trusted team administering the entire program. It's a very simplified 3-step process. Oftentimes you bring us the property and it is a quick claim deed to the trust. And we take care of everything after that. And you get a note back and you start an income stream. You don't even have to find the realtor, don't even have to list the property. The promissory note is issued against the Iron Gate Holdings Trust, and you select one of 7 payout options. So you have a choice of that. 3 of the payout options, if you want to change your mind later, you can. And you can default to the others. You can take a lower payout, then later on take a different payout. The other 4 are fixed. They're fixed guaranteed. The funds enter the trust, and the income tax is deferred, and you're getting income at a reasonable rate of return on all the money, not just the after-tax portion. No more management, no more dealing with any of those things. We have a 5-year, if you just want to put your toe in the water, it's at 5% interest rate with return of premium, the original amount of money you sent to us at the 5th year. Or you can roll over into one of the other programs from that if you don't want to take it all at once and pay the tax. But that's just a 5-year commitment. There's a 10, 15, and 20-year schedule. We are currently offering a 10% bonus on the notes. The assets inside Iron Gate Holdings are doing so well. If you have 200,000, we can give you a note for 220. 500, we can give you a note for 550 at the 6, 6.5, or 7.
And so now for some fun case studies. When it comes to the structured installment sales for, like Kevin said, it can work for a lot of different plans where some people we have it even over the $1 million threshold for the 537 installment sale trust. They like this model because it kind of feels like an annuity where if you don't really have plans for heirs, for example, and they say, hey, you know what, I really want to spend all this money. I have a ton of other money in retirement accounts and different things. I'd like to just wind this part down. It works for any style of strategy, but I'll go into some of the benefits, especially for the people that have the properties in the $100,000 to, seven, $800,000 range where we can get you in a 0% effective rate for capital gains. But on this first case study, it was for a small dental practice for, again, different names, but for Maria. She had the typical basis startup with $250,000, as you can imagine, with the building. It was a small little building that she had there. And then, of course, the dental chairs, the x-rays, all that fun stuff, around $250,000. Was selling for $800,000, which you start putting the math together, that's going to have a $550,000 capital gain. If she were to just simply pay taxes up front, that would trigger a $135,000 tax liability because when you have a capital gain in 1 year, it increases your AGI. So if we can split it up over a period, we can leverage the 15% rate and prevent the additional 3.3 to 3.8% on the net investment income tax. People forget about that all the time. The NIIT tax is something that is triggered over $250,000. So if you're going to have a gain of, let's say, 500,000 for example's sake, we get a lot of people in states like Nevada, Florida that say, hey, I'm just going to pay 20%. They're forgetting about that extra 3.8, which you start putting that on a bigger number, it adds up a lot. And so same situation for Maria where she chose the 10-year structured principal and interest note at 6%. So rather than her paying the capital gains right up front, she's paying taxes gradually over the 10-year period. Where by doing so, it led to her typically with what we see, depending on what state you're in. As you can imagine, your California, your New York's going to have more of a net benefit. But usually we see a 15 to 30% savings in the taxes, let alone the additional growth that happens on top of the taxes by not paying up front. So this money was used to supplement some retirement and fund some travels. She went to a couple cruises, did the typical Alaskan cruise, and then did some travels in Europe as well. For the next one, this is where we talk a little bit about the 0% capital gains tax rate. So this is for David and Maria. David and Maria had a purchase price back in 2006 of $150,000, currently sold for $600,000. And what that looks like for them in a typical transaction is roughly an $110,000 estimated tax liability between federal and state. So what we did for David and Maria is they were able to control their income where they were just getting Social Security and then had retirement funds, where they didn't have to deal with any RMDs yet. So their effective rate was below the 0% capital gains rate. And a lot of people don't realize that, unlike the typical tax brackets where, from let's say 0 to, 12,000, it's 10%, 12,000 to 50, it's 15 or whatever those are. It's, the first X amount is 12%, the next is 20, blah, blah, blah. When it comes to capital gains, it's an all or nothing, meaning that if you're in the 0% rate, then you get that 0%. But the second you go from, I think it's 96 or $98,900 now, once you get over that threshold, it's taxed at 15%. There is no mercy when it comes to that calculation. What we did for them is some direct tax planning where we kept their income under that $98,900 threshold, and we structured the payments so that between their Social Security and the payments from the structured installment sale, they were able to be under that threshold. And with that, over the 15 years, they're going to have to pay 0% in capital gains taxes. By doing that and never having to, not just defer the tax, but literally never have to pay it, their effective rate of return maths out to around 14%. Because if you were to, let's say, typically pay the taxes and reinvest those funds, for one, those are going to be taxable again. Two, by us doing this, even though the payments are going to be at a rate of 6.5%, because we never paid those taxes over the same 15-year period, it creates that effective rate of 14%, which is pretty strong. If any of you can get 14% year over year, come talk to us. If you can get 14% year over year without any downside, that would be pretty remarkable. So you would be in the top percentile of traders. Next thing we want to do is show you how this looks for you. So the revenue estimator is a really neat calculation where if you go to q-1031.com and you go to one of the drop downs where it says 537 installment sale trust or the structured installment sale, you'll have the ability to put in some numbers. You can put in your sales price, what you project, of course, round numbers are totally fine, just an estimate, what your anticipated cost basis is. From there, we calculate your capital gains, what your estimated tax liability, and then for the future, what your projected income could look like. So it's a really neat way to plan prior to you having your sale. We like to talk to you early. Don't come last minute. We get people coming last minute and it's like running around with your head off like the chickens do. Come early, let's plan for it, and this revenue estimator will be a great start for you. Again, q-1031.com, you can find that. And then Kevin's going to get us closed out here with some key takeaways.
One of the key takeaways is with some forethought and planning, the compounding effect of deferring the tax and allowing that money to stay invested, earning a rate of return for you is multiples. We can even layer this transaction considering your current retirement accounts. So imagine if you left your retirement accounts invested, managed well, growing, and you didn't have to take much out of them and used this to front load that retirement process until RMDs kick in, required minimum distributions and stuff kick in. The compounding effect over time by laddering a transaction with us can be 2 to 3 times the final outcome of not using this method. You see, when escrow closes, they're going to wire that money somewhere. If they wire it to your account, it's taxable. They wire it to the trust, it's tax deferred until you actually receive the income. It grows in the trust, tax deferred, until you pull it out, much like a retirement account. It's not a retirement account, but it functions much the same way. And this allows you to have some laddered planning. So the compounding effect of that money remaining invested, working for you, it's huge. It is truly huge. One of the benchmarks we use, and I've used this from the very beginning when I bought my advisor's practice. He sold me his practice. That's how this all happened in 2004. I was running defense contracts and was burned out. I was living in Japan at the time. I came home and bought my advisor's practice. That's how this whole thing started. And the benchmark I used to compare financial strategies, which other advisors weren't using, but I was an entrepreneur, so I looked at things differently. What is the net money you're receiving every year for the 20 years of retirement? Net of fees, expenses, and taxes. Taxes are just an expense. And how much money is still in the account at the 20th year? Add those two numbers together. That's the total benefit of when you were allowed to take vacations with, buy the grandkids, Christmas gifts and birthday gifts and all the other things you're allowed to do. I mean, that's a good benchmark to gauge different strategies. Then we would take those strategies and test them against actual market conditions over the previous 20 years, because we know what those numbers are, right? And by taking this type of an approach, the total benefit to the client was sometimes double doing anything else, even though they may have earned a higher rate of return with a Ken Fisher or something. Because of the taxes eating away every year, what were you left to live on, and how much is still in the account on the 20th year when you're 85? Add those two numbers together. Following our method and doing some planning on these things, that total benefit over that period of time can be easily double what it would have been any other way. But you see, at close of escrow, the money's got to go somewhere. If it lands in your trust account, it's tax deferred till you pull it out. This folds well into estate planning. This folds very well into removing estate taxes. In fact, this exact trust model is used differently without an installment sale provision to bleed down an estate below estate tax thresholds. So very, very high end, if you don't have 25 million, they won't talk to you. Very high end estate planning firms use this exact method in-house for the same benefits we're using here. So this is very commonly used. We'll show you how it works. We will educate your CPA. We will do the illustrations. We'll do the math. We'll give you the due diligence. We're going to give you a lot of reading. Nothing happens in the first probably 5 or 6 appointments. No decisions are made. There's back and forth. We expect you to read the materials, come back with good questions. We're very educational. As you can tell, we're very direct. We're very open. We will share a lot of stuff with you because we're not worried about competitors stealing the program. Most of them aren't competent enough to run a program like this. but it's very autopilot. 22 years, zero audits, because we report on a Form 6252 what we did. The IRS doesn't expect to get paid. They understand exactly what we're doing. We have meetings with them. They like us. We like them. I find them easier to work with than the average CPA. You maintain full control of the assets because it's collateral for your note. Now, you can't buy, sell, and trade. That would violate constructive receipt, but they are your collateral. You have lots of checks and balances in the system. The contracts are binding upon us, not you. We have to perform to the contract. The fees are very low. For 20 years, I have been working to get the fees down. Our net profit managing these things is the same as it was in 2004 as a percentage. But as we brought these services in-house, we've improved the quality of the services and we brought the fees down. The fees now are almost half what they were in 2004. We do all kinds of things like quarterly payments because that reduces the fee because it's less accounting on our part. So we lowered the fee when we went to quarterly payments. Business sales is what we do a lot of because they have nowhere to go. When they sell, they're just hammered, right? Real estate, people want a 1031, and a lot of real estate investors only want their money in real estate or their mattress. They don't want it anywhere else, right? But once they understand how this works and they understand the benefits of it, and sometimes if you do the 537 IST, you can actually use part of those proceeds to buy real estate on the other side. We can talk to you about that. I even did an 8-kilo ruby. There was a lot of history. It had been around a very long time. It was in a Buddhist temple for a long time, stuff like that. That was one of the odd things we did. We even do crypto. So if you need to exit some crypto and defer the tax, diversify yourself out of some of this crypto, we can help you with that as well. So we would love to talk to you. We love complicated, interesting transactions because a lot of our transactions are very vanilla. It's copy, paste, fill in the blank stuff. So if you have an interesting transaction, we enjoy that. Use these QR codes with your phone to go straight to the website. Fill out the revenue estimator. Fill out that report there and get some numbers back because once you see the numbers as they apply to your situation, the concept starts making sense. And the other thing, remember, we are fiduciaries. You have logins to everything. You have to approve anything we do. So you're not giving your money away to somebody else. On the registered investment advisory side, the fiduciary advisor, we clear through Schwab. They are registered with the SEC. Where's your money? It's actually at Schwab is where it's at. So we can talk to you more about that later. We look forward to working with you. We have an entire team of people back here that all have very unique expertise. We have outside firms that we have agreement with that provide additional services to you. And along with the fee for the trust every year comes annual tax planning. We're not only going to defer the tax, we're going to reduce the taxes on the income as you're receiving it over time as well. We look forward to serving you. We hope you enjoyed this. We have books and materials you can get from the website, and we look forward to providing those and discussing those things with you as well. Trevor?
Yeah, absolutely. And one neat little fun part at the end too that we've been recently adding in, which is awesome for those of you that are looking to do the structured installment sale or even a 1031 exchange. When you start this process, what you're going to get is a little breakdown that looks like this, where you can log in, see when your next payments are coming in, see what program you've chosen. For people doing, let's say, the structured installment sale, what you'll see is, hey, I started with 1.175 million in principal, and I chose my, let's say 15 years principal and interest program. You'll see when your next payment's coming in, how much principal you've received over the years. Really neat way to keep yourself on track throughout the years of where you're at on the timeline with one pretty simple login. And for those of you that are doing the 1031 exchange, what you'll be able to do is track your 45-day period. Rather than having to write the days on your whiteboard or on your calendar, you can literally log in once your 45-day period starts and start inputting the properties that you located, or if it's just the 537 installment sale trust or the structured installment sale, you're able to notify that to us too. So it's a really easy UI user interface for you guys to work through that helps you stay on track and not having to figure out where you put that sticky note on when your 45-day period started and how many more days you have left to make a decision. So we try to make this process, like Kevin said, as smooth as possible for you, and we are fully transparent. So any documents you want to see, we are not scared of. As Kevin said, we've been doing these since 2004. A lot of history behind this. very simple program, and we'd love to answer any of your questions. And that kind of bridges to the next part of the conversation where we're going to open up a Q&A for a little bit here. We still got another about 10, 15 minutes. I saw a couple that popped up in the chat, so let me pull up those real quick. But anybody else, feel free to start writing down your questions. One of the first ones here from Dustin was, how would a seller finance deal work with a 537? Let's say you sell a batch of property worth a million, $200,000 down, and buyer has to refi in 12 months to buy you out. For those of you that actually are already in a seller finance deal and have a large upcoming balloon, you can actually still use the 537 installment sale trust, which is pretty neat. So before you realize that balloon payment, you're able to assign your interest in, let's say, that example of the $800,000 on the $1 million balloon to the 537 installment sale trust and still defer the tax liability. You are completely ineligible to do that for a 1031 exchange. So in the example that Dustin gave, he's getting a $200,000 down payment. That portion of it is eligible for a 1031, but the rest of the, refinance 12 months out of the 800,000, you're unable to do a 1031 exchange, but you can still assign it to the trust. So what some people do is they'll put that down payment inside the 537 installment sale trust. And then later on, once that $800,000 comes through, it gets dropped in the same trust. So you only need one trust for all of these transactions. You don't need to do, 10 different trusts for 10 different transactions or proceeds that are coming through.
I have a client that wants to do the Iron Gate holdings for a portion of the sale, have the rest go into a 537 installment sale trust and defer income for 10 years. So he's putting enough money on the one side to have fixed income for the next 10 years to cover the income he was enjoying from the business. The rest he just wants to grow deferred until he needs it later. So you can even use both programs and separate the money out and do some very neat income planning and defer all those taxes and leave that money working for you.
Yeah, and that's the fun part, just to kind of second on what he said with the 1031 exchange too, where we have a lot of people that have, three, four, $5 million sales, and trying to coordinate a 1031 exchange on that size can be difficult. And if you're looking to downsize from, let's say, a, three, four, $5 million property to, let's say, a million or $2 million property, you can 1031 a portion and then direct the rest to the 537 installment sale trust
Yep.
or the structured installment sale, like you had mentioned. So it gives you a lot of flexibility on the options. We're big on options, and working with us as your 1031 exchange, we give you that. So no matter what, whether you want to do this installment sale trust, the structured installment sale, if it's completely your plan Z, you still want to have that option to you. And by using us, we can give you that advice on what directions where you can go without realizing that capital gain tax liability. One thing we can say confidently is if you work with us, we can guarantee you will not have a tax liability if you use us for the 1031 exchange. Whether or not you decide to pay the tax is one story, but using one of our services, we can make sure that won't happen.
Any more questions coming in?
I see Dave. I'm going to allow you to talk, Dave, and you'll be able to ask your question.
Will this recorded presentation be available so that I could share it with my accountant?
Yes. Yes, it'll be available on the website in what we call an evergreen where people can log in and watch it in the future.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, and if you want him to come on with us too, he is more than welcome to. Like Kevin said earlier, it's usually coin toss, not any dig against your CPA or tax attorney or really any attorney. Sometimes they just haven't done this process before, and it can seem easy to lump it up with other programs that are completely unrelated. Just for everybody's sake, I think it pops up often. It's why I'm bringing it up. One thing that we get synonymous with is the monetized installment sale, and we are far from a monetized installment sale.
Mhm.
With the monetized installment sale, the problem is that note we were talking about that you hold against the installment sale trust. If you were to go to, let's say, Chase Bank, for example, and say, hey, my promissory note is collateralized by, let's say, a basket of ETFs, an annuity, bonds, whatever you accept as the collateral for your note inside of the trust. Can I take a loan for, let's say, $500,000 on this asset and then get some of that money now? That's where it's too good to be true, where you get all of the benefits of the tax deferral, and access to the money with the money still being invested. So that's where there's one program, and I think it's what, South Dakota they're doing it, Kev?
The guy was in Idaho. I think
Yeah.
the IRS has finally put him in jail. So.
Yeah.
Sometimes your advisors, they'll hit Google and they'll come up with some other stuff that has nothing to do with us. This is the Ernst & Young program. There's been updates to the trust language as trust law changes. Again, the IRS approved us as an alternative to a 1031. We have a private letter ruling. We have a second one we've submitted that's going to be approved here real soon. So that worries us. Sometimes they'll spend 10 minutes on Google, then tell you no, no, no. And what they read has nothing to do with anything we're doing. If you have an accountant or an attorney, there's a due diligence package that we go over with them. We like having that call with them without you on the call. That way egos don't get involved and we can actually do some educating and they can get up to speed on what it is we're doing and understand that it's completely safe.
Well, there's a couple more questions that popped up. Anything else for you, Dave, or do you want me to kick you off on the little panel here?
Take me off.
All
Sorry.
right. Hey, we look forward to meeting you. Talk soon.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, a couple more questions that popped up here. One of the other ones, I'm sure like one of you had heard, yes, the presentation is available to replay later. If any of you have problems accessing it, feel free to call in or email us. We'll make sure to get that playback to you where, you can go back and pause, play, access it on your own time. Another one had popped up asking where the money is located. We have a couple different layers. So with our standard model that we do up front, there is a one-off trust bank account at City National Bank. So just like you have a bank account, and then from there it goes to the investment custodians. So we have a strong relationship with City National Bank, and let's say the KV26 Trust has its own bank account. You're going to get login access to that bank account as well, where you can see everything that's going on and we discuss with you the investments you accept as collateral for your note. If you do something like our standard model, as I mentioned earlier, we have a running average of 9 to 13%, and we use a mix of investments inside to guarantee the interest coming out and plan for the return of principal plus growth at the end of the 10-year note period. You're not bounded by 10 years. You can take money out at any point in time, refinance that, start getting a higher number. Lots of flexibility there. But along with City National Bank, the money is located in a couple different places. So a lot of people like to utilize either Schwab or SEI. We've had a preference of SEI because we get better service over there, where we're not dealing with the 800 number employees that typically don't have the speed of response that we like. For those of you that are unfamiliar with SEI, they have billions and billions under their platform. They're just like Fidelity and Schwab and the others, just a different style, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Along with that, we clear through A-rated insurers. A lot of our clients like to utilize some principal insurance with either an annuity of sorts inside of the trust, and that could be nationwide, that could be Penn Mutual, Mass Mutual, all sorts of options. But none of your money is going to be with the Q companies, which gives you the protection because one of the main questions that people ask a lot of the time is, well, I'm trusting these guys with my money. How do I know you're not Bernie Madoff and you can't run away with my money?
The
We
money's never with us. It's at these A-rated SEC registered firms. The money's never actually with us.
So it's like having an advisor for your retirement accounts where let's say me and Kevin and Christian and Craig and all the guys you saw on the screen there were, kumbaya on a plane and we crashed and burned. Someone else just needs to pick up this account. All they can keep on going. So it's meant to not be reliant on us. But of course, we don't want that to happen. But the idea is none of the money is with us intentionally. So it gives you more protections as the investor.
There's a lot of protections we've designed into the program. There's an app the bank gives you that you have to log in and approve anything we do. It's a security app with a 6-digit code that changes every 30 seconds. And there's a whole series of other security measures we have in place here. Not that they're needed, they're not needed, but you don't know that. You've known us 10 minutes, right? So we provide those to give you the assurance you're not going to wake up at 2 a.m. one day and wonder where your money went. And you can log in to the accounts, by the way. There's a way of logging in and checking everything. I always joke about the gentleman that for about 6 months logged in every morning around 6 a.m. because we get an email when you log in, right? Notifying us that you logged in. And then he started logging in about once a week, and then he logged in about once a month, and now it's been almost 5 years, and he doesn't return phone calls for 3 days now when we need to talk to him sometimes. So But in the beginning, boy, he was checking that account every morning, so,
Yeah, right.
but I understand. He had never owned anything other than real estate. He owned apartment buildings and he wouldn't invest in the stock market at all. And now he understands that a well-managed portfolio does extremely well and can give the income and appreciation equivalent to the buildings.
Well, another fun one. Eileen had asked, can multiple properties be held within one trust? If so, do they all have to be sold at the same time? Yes.
Yeah.
All you need is one trust, which is really, really neat. So a bulk of the work comes with the first transaction where we have to do all the setup for the trust, the bank accounts, the investment accounts. Once that work is set up, it's super smooth. Where let's say your first property sold for $500,000, for example's sake, and you got 10 of them. With this model, the note you hold for the first one is going to be $500,000. Let's say 3 months later, assuming no growth, just for ease of conversation here, you have another one sell for 500,000. All we have to do is send you another DocuSign. You understand that, hey, we started with 500,000, now it's a million inside. And now you're going to hold a note for $1 million against the trust. So we consolidate the paperwork. It takes another 20 minutes just for us to add in the additional language that you, of course, added another transaction, you're good to go. So they don't all have to be sold at the same time. It gives you the flexibility of not having to worry about the, 45, 180-day period. We have some people that started with us with the installment sale trust a couple of years ago and are planning to add in another one now. So it just kind of works that way where it depends on, certain leases or certain agreements that you have with tenants to add in more as you add in more. So lots of flexibility there.
Right now, the largest was 43 transactions into one trust. I have a gentleman that started the process to sell off over 200 single family homes he owns in the Kansas City, Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas area, the metro area there. It's 40 years he's built up that portfolio. So he's going to be selling those all off. So he'll break that 43. He only wants to take a minimal interest from it. He wants it to grow for the kids in the future.
Yeah, and one fun thing, just to kind of add on to what Kevin was saying about the kids, and another person had asked about this too, is, what happens when you pass away and the structure for the kids if you want to do things early. So there are actually pretty neat ways where you can turn this into an early gift, where we have some families that already are in the process of planning for the larger transactions like we talked about, at some point do you need five, six, $700,000 a year in passive interest when you're not, dealing with any mortgage payments anymore? You can only spend so much a month, right? Unless you're really trying to, add a $50,000 a month car payment or something like that, right? So what you're able to do, which is pretty neat, is let's say in a $5 million transaction, you just need half of that in terms of the income stream, where that typically would kick out $300,000 in income plus growth. But you say, hey, I only need 150. Is there a way we can help out the kids early? On half of that note, we can actually gift that early on so the kids are receiving that interest income instead of you. So that's no longer on your 1040 added to your bottom line. It's added to the kids' bottom line, which, as we are all aware of, things are more expensive nowadays. So having that extra pick me up of 20, 30, 40, 100 plus $1,000 a year for some people in income is what they need to qualify for a mortgage, or it's what they need to be able to get their kids, tuition for school, private schooling, all these different things. It's really neat to be able to have that benefit of having the early gift and still getting the step up in basis later. That's a full possibility. So, like Kevin said, this trust really does wear multiple hats. And Kevin's been doing this a long time where he has some clients, what, on third generation right now?
I have two clients on the third generation, over 40 on the second generation. And with the funerals and the other things I've been attending, because after 20 years, and let's say your average client's 60 when they come to you, generally, most of my clients are 50s, 60s when they come to us. I've watched this go from generation to generation. And I got to tell you, it's pretty cool to be dealing with the third generation when grandfather was your client and to see that everything he planned for is working out very, very well. I have another client, though. He's taking income from the trust, but he has income going to his daughter. She teaches music at a large private school, but as you know, private schools don't pay all that well. And that extra income allowed her to continue doing what she truly loves. She can afford to do that. And then she qualified to buy a really nice condominium there near the school and has the extra income to continue. So you can use this to subsidize all kinds of things. Also, once the money's in the trust, you can have liquidity events to take care of emergencies where you can't have that with a property. You got to sell the property, pay the tax, right? And you take a big hit because dad's in a home and doesn't know the day of the week, and mom needs an extra 16,000 a month for Alzheimer's care because she wants them to stay in the nice place, not the place that smells like urine. So real estate's a wonderful investment. We love it. We have partners we're buying apartment buildings with, but it doesn't have liquidity, or you have to refinance it to get liquidity. It's not easy. We're here. The income's generally better than the rents were. The appreciation is generally better than the property was because it has less expenses than a property. And now you have the opportunities at that end of life where things get real expensive the last couple of years with medical and long-term care and stuff like that. You have an easy solution for that without upsetting the entire apple cart, without raiding your retirement accounts and things like that. So when those things happen, which they happen, you have a solution that has far less impact on your total finances.
Another one that popped up was who sells the property? I don't know if you heard this a little bit earlier, but we are very shortly going to have our own realty service up and running. And depending on the state that you're in, we might be able to be the ones that list and help assist with the sale of your property. So make sure to reach out to us there. If not, we can try to do our best to connect you with one of the realtors or business brokers in our network that can assist you with that and then are already adept to these transactions. So it's really easy when you have a full team that, in-house here, we have attorneys, CPAs, accredited investment fiduciaries, CFPs, CTBAs, and more that we all know the different parts of the puzzle. And so it's really neat when you have a team on the outside too, in terms of the real estate sales side that understands what's going on. So make sure to shoot us an email or give us a call, and we might be able to help you with that side. Next one that popped up was when a property is sold, there is also a state tax impact. How does this work for state taxes? It defers the state tax too? Or go ahead, Kev. I'll let you take this one.
No, it defers that too. It defers the state tax, it defers the federal tax. In the case of a business, sometimes you have to recover a little bit of accelerated depreciation, but we can minimize 80 to 90% of that as well and defer that into the trust. If you follow our advice, we can even defer that 3.5% the state tries to take from you. Then you got to come beg for the money back. And in some states, like California does that, and other places do that. So some of the expenses in the sale we can't minimize, like if there's a realtor or escrow and stuff like that. That's all normal. The previous question, though, about who sells the property. In some cases, we have investors. So this is an investment property and they want to buy it. Maybe it needs rehabbed and repositioned so you can get better rents. We can even set it up to where the trust participates in the repositioning and the second exit of the property with the investors. So you can get a second pass there sometimes, especially in like apartment buildings. So we can talk to you about that. So not only do you not have to go through the rehab and all the repositioning of the property to deal with it, we have investors that'll do that, and you can participate. Not only have an exit, but participate on when they exit from their repositioning, because they're going to reposition them and then sell them off to institutional investors. Once they're fully renovated, rented out at market rates, and repositioned, then there are institutional investors that pick those up in their inventory because it's fully stabilized at that point. So we have investors that do that. Not only do you get your exit, you can get a second pass later.
Yep. And one neat part for the state tax liability too, a lot of people bring up the depreciation recapture question. And like Kevin said, if you do an accelerated depreciation on your property, which probably 95% of you, if not more, did not do anything fancy, you just took straight line depreciation, that is completely deferrable with the installment method of reporting. We study 453, 537, 1031s all day long. That is our specialty. That is what we do. We look at the revenue rulings, Supreme Court tax rulings, and more on this process. And consistently, what happens with straight line depreciation is it turns into what's called unrecaptured Section 1250 gain. So you hear two really annoying words there. You hear recapture and gain. What happens is it turns into its own subsection of capital gain that can be taxed at the highest rate of 25%. So it ties to your income tax level. So if you have a typical installment sale trust where you're deferring the entirety of the principal and just getting the interest off of it, you could, in theory, never have to deal with that quote unquote recapture as it all gets stepped up in basis upon your passing. So on the state level, because it flows through your federal tax return that you haven't received anything, there's nothing taxable on the state side too.
We have people that do the cost segregation studies, and you've taken some of your property, converted it to personal property, and then taken the deduction. We can mitigate much of that, but not all of it. But we can still mitigate much of it in the planning. That adds a step to the process. It's nice to get that deduction. Just remember, the IRS doesn't give you anything they don't want back with interest. Right? So it's nice to get it now. You think, well, I'll just have to die. Well, you don't have to wait for that here. So we can mitigate a lot of it. We can mitigate all of it. Depends on the situation. We have a plan for all of it. We've done it before. Again, zero audits. We get letters from the IRS occasionally on some of these trusts. 9 out of 10 goes back to the CPA didn't follow our instructions on the Form 6252 or something of that nature. So then we go back and file an amended return, fix the error. And once we fix the error for you, it never results in an audit. The IRS says, okay, the numbers add up. Thank you. That's the end of it. And that's, so we have a tremendous track record on that because this is not a gray area. This is not a loophole. This is none of those other things. We're honestly right down the middle of the road on this. IRS is 100% okay with everything we do. I have great conversations with them about those things. They talk to me about these other programs they're looking at. I have a little bit of, you might want to call it insider knowledge of what they're planning on doing, but they're so understaffed, they haven't gone after some of these other programs. There's this new thing with a complex spendthrift trust, which is fine, but the way they're entering the trust and the way they're trying to defer tax, that's not what that trust is designed for. And that's going to be the next round of things you're going to see a whole bunch of people getting in trouble on because they're taking a good thing and they're marrying two separate things together that it doesn't work. And there's 3 reasons every one of those would fail an audit. So when you're hitting Google, you're going to see a lot of stuff out there. And even in some Facebook ads, I see some of these people pushing that complex spendthrift trust. Have that conversation with us. I wish those people would stop doing those things because they're making a bad name for a good thing. Complex spendthrift trust is a good estate planning tool. They're, again, just abusing the process. The tax laws we're following are 85 years old, 50 years old, 63 or 4 years old. This is done 5,000 or more times a year. It's a standard thing used in mergers and acquisition for the people exiting to defer the tax on the exit. Then they take an income stream over time. This is all what they would refer to as normal and ordinary business procedures in these transactions. It's just not normal and ordinary for the average CPA in Main Street because this isn't what they do. Don't bug them too much. It's not their fault. We'll bring you up to speed. We'll give you the materials. We'll even pre-fill out the tax forms to make sure they're done correctly. We really appreciate the time you spent with us. I wish you guys would have asked more questions.
Well, there's 2 more. We can do these last 2 and call it. And then the rest we will say in the bottom right for those of you that are still here. Scan the QR code, go to the website, book a call with us, and then we will, based on your numbers, review all of your questions, literally do an apples to apples comparison with the 1031 options, your paying the tax, all that fun stuff. Last 2 questions here were, first one was, is there a minimum time to keep the money from the sale in 537? Not necessarily, but if you were to leave early, then it would trigger the tax implications. And depending on what you accept as the collateral for your note, let's say, for example, you wanted some money in the stock market, some money in an annuity, and some money in like a REIT. Some of these outside investments have like an early termination, and there could be a problem if you were to leave, let's say, in year 1. That could be a problem on that side. There's no, I guess you could say, force on our side to stay, but depending on what you accept as collateral, there could be. So the right answer to your question is no, but technically speaking, there could be some hiccups by doing so, where you might not have all of your money. Or if you decide to do something more aggressive as the collateral for your note and it's down, then if you take the money out early, you might not have as much as you started with. So when we have programs like this, I would say if you're looking to park it and leave it for a year and then leave, this probably isn't the model for you. We are yet to have somebody leave. Everybody stays until they pass away. The only time we lose people is when we have inherited clients where the kids receive the trust and then take all the money tax free. But we don't really consider them clients. They're kind of just, like I said, inherited.
Over 2,000 clients, nobody leaves. The kids leave. So you need to address that in your estate planning documents if you want this to go generational to the grandkids and stuff like that. But we can cover those things with you. Again, if you just wanted to park it for a year and walk away, this isn't the program for you. There's a lot of work for us to set all these things up for you. We make a big investment on the front end, and you don't pay us in advance for anything. Because if you paid us in advance, that would violate part of the tax code. If you want to do that, maybe consider the 5-year interest only program at Iron Gate Holdings. But I'm not sure why you'd want to do that. Why do you want to pay the tax all at once like that? I mean, the money's got to be somewhere. It's not in a suitcase under the bed, right? If it's here, it's tax deferred and growing. If it's somewhere else, it's all taxable and taxed every year in anything it makes. There's a lot of benefits, right? Once you understand all that, you're not going to want to leave. I look forward to serving you, answering your questions. Ask me the tough questions. Sometimes we get CPAs in here that want to stump the presenter. I love when they come on because they ask really interesting questions. All right, we'll see you guys. We look forward to meeting with you. Thank you.